Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next part of our Zero to Ace DCS series. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some maneuvers you can do with the airplane. Again, we're concentrating mostly on the basic trainer here, keeping things as simple as possible so that you can kind of get a little feel for the different maneuvers and what they're going to look like when you move on to the quicker aircraft. So the only change we're going to do to our little mission we set up last time is we're going to take this airplane and we're actually going to put it on the runway. So to do that, we're simply going to come over here and set this to be takeoff from runway. Click it like that, and now we're starting on the runway itself. Go ahead and save this mission real quick. Go ahead and press that one, hit start. It's going to go take us over to the simulator itself. I'm going to press fly, and now everything is already good to go. Go ahead and get my engine set correctly. So now that we're going to be doing a little bit of work with acrobatics here, there's a couple things you want to keep in mind. The big one is not overstressing the airplane. Now, I know that sounds like something that's like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. But believe it or not, this little gauge here is your best friend as far as determining how mean you're being to the airplane. As a general rule, the green range is considered acceptable. You have negative Gs, which are tremendously uncomfortable, and you have positive Gs. As you can see, this aircraft is limited, and we should not exceed 7 Gs at any point. As you're going to be seeing, especially when we move to the faster airplane, is it's tremendously difficult to overstress an airplane. One thing I will do is I always like to reset it before I take off here. Taking a look over everything to make sure it's secure. One thing you can do is you want to actually flip over to directional gyro mode. It's a nice little safety feature. We want to make sure our latitude is set correctly. Our compass is set correctly. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Carburetor heat is off. I'm going to go ahead and open up all of my oil radiators and all that other good stuff. Taking a look, working my way on the left side. Again, whenever we're doing these kind of things, we want to be very, very mindful. Okay, let's go ahead and do a standard takeoff. Then we'll establish our maximum continuous power. Get a little bit of altitude with this. Again, I want to make sure everything's working the way we expect it to. Looks pretty good, looks pretty good. All right, let's do it to it. Slowly, smoothly increase power. I'm going to go ahead and release it. A little bit of left foot. The rudder on this thing is spectacular as far as effectiveness goes. Start rushing down the runway. Remember, when we get to 90, you want to lift the front wheel off the ground. And as you start to feel the aircraft unbalanced, go push the nose forward, and the aircraft comes up nice and smooth on its own. Once we get airborne, remember, it's going to be 2 clicks to bring up the gear, because you're going to have to slap the gear out of its neutral position. It's just kind of a unique feature of this particular aircraft. Flaps we didn't use for takeoff, just in case, though. Once everybody's up, we're just going to go ahead and put them both away, and we're good to go. All right, let's go ahead and set up our climb power, our maximum continuous power. So we're allowed to use 95. We're currently using 90, so our 9, I should say, which is our instrument by this one right here. But we can go ahead and reduce our RPM to 82, which is the magic number as far as maximum continuous power goes. Now, we're going to leave this at max continuous, so we're not going to do anything too crazy unless we start getting really, 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 really hot. All right, so whenever you're going to be doing basic maneuvers, you're always going to want to make sure you give yourself plenty of room in which to do the basic maneuvers. You certainly don't want to be climbing, 30 feet off the ground and try to do something like a split S or something like that. And as you're going to be seeing, a lot of the stuff that translates here translates really, really, really well with the other aircraft. It's just going to be a slightly different speed. Go ahead and look behind me. You can see the nice little airport that we're abandoning there. And don't worry, we'll be back. We'll be back. Engine temperatures are already so high, we're actually going to have to reduce the power even greater because we're basically killing this thing right now. Let's drop this down to 75. There we go. Let's see if that cools things down. I've literally got everything as open as it can get. We should be doing these maneuvers during the summer, right? Or actually, during the winter, rather. All right. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of altitude. I'm going to get myself at least 500 meters before we start experimenting. A little bit of right foot there, a little bit of right foot. One of these days, I'm actually going to sit there and set that trim dynamically. Notice we've already pulled 1.5 Gs. There we are. I'm going to go ahead and nose over now that we've reached 500 meters. We're just going to build up ourselves a little bit of speed here. So the first maneuver we're going to take a look at is going to be a basic turn. Now, it's one of those things where you're sitting there going, I know how to turn an airplane. It's not that difficult. Well, the thing is, in a military situation, sometimes you're going to need to do a turn in such a way that's going to be very, very, very aggressive. And we're actually going to experiment a little bit with that so that you can kind of see the difference. Get a little bit of airspeed and cool the engine off a little more, even though I've got everything cranked open as wide as I can get. There we go, about 250 kilometers an hour translates to 140 knots. So we are definitely moving. Okay. So the general rule, whenever you're doing any sort of turns in a military aircraft, is the more aggressive the turn, the more energy is going to get sucked out of your airplane. I know that sounds pretty straightforward, but a lot of people, what they'll try to do is pull the hardest turn they can every chance they can get. So in this case, let's go ahead and take a gentle turn. I'm going to give myself a little bit of right rudder. And I'm going to hold it at about this bank. So now as soon as I take this turn, I can feel that I have to pull back on the elevator in order to maintain it. That amount of distance you're pulling back on your controls right now in order to keep exactly 0 feet per minute, I should say meters per second up and down, is the amount of energy you're sucking out of the plane. So if you feel that you need to pull your controls all the way back towards you in order to not lose any altitude in this turn, that is a tremendous amount of drag you're going to be creating, which is going to drastically slow down your aircraft, which is going to make you an easier target, as you're going to find out a little bit. So again, this is a nice, gentle, very, very leisurely turn. Doing this in F-16 is very easy to do, unless of course you're way down, which is going to be a common problem and a common theme, as you'll see a little later on. There we are. I'll go ahead and come out of my turn, a little left foot with a little bit of left aileron there, and we are good to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and increase the bank of the turn. And again, that was about, let's say 25, 30 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and take a left turn here. Again, a little bit of left foot, and I'm just going to increase the bank to about 45. Now notice how hard you have to pull back on the controls in order to maintain this bank angle. You probably have that stick about half of its travel right now in order to maintain that 0 meter per second. That's a lot of speed reduction. As a matter of fact, if you look at my current airspeed, I've lost 15 kilometers an hour since I've started this turn, but notice how much faster the turn is being completed. Let's go ahead and bring this all the way around right back to west. There we are. A little bit of right foot. Careful coming out. And you can see everything's looking pretty darn good so far. I've got this thing fairly lined up. Everything's kind of cruising along. I'm heading the correct direction. Everything's awesome. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see what happens if we try to do a turn at our maximum bank angle. In order to pull this off, we're going to need a lot of energy in this aircraft. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and dive just a tiny bit. That's going to go ahead and cool things off for us. It's also going to give us a few kilometers per hour. Now I'm going to go ahead and bank the aircraft all the way on its side and pull back all the way. Notice the aircraft starts warning, and we're starting to buff it, and I'll come right back out. Now notice, during that particular turn, the aircraft started shaking because we got critically close to a stall. The other thing worth noting is, did you see how much energy was sucked out of the aircraft as we did that particular maneuver? When you move up to the jets, especially a very, very heavily laden jet, you're going to discover that that's going to have a tremendous impact on your ability to keep your speed up, especially if you're doing a slow aircraft. Once you get slow, you get dead. Trust me, once you do dogfighting. So now that that's been taken a look at, let's take a look at a couple other considerations. The speed you enter a turn is going to dictate the width of the turn. So in this particular case, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to reduce power significantly here. We'll go ahead and slow us down. A little bit of right foot as we come slowing down here. The slower your turn, the smaller the circle you will make with the turn. Now the problem is some aircraft don't have enough energy that they can reliably do that. So if we were to actually apply full power, go ahead and take our turn here, we're basically taking up absolutely no room underneath us. Go ahead and bring this one all the way around. Again, I'm at full throttle right now in order to maintain this. There we are, and pull ourselves back out. Bring our throttle back to what it was before. Interesting. So you can see, because I was going so slow, I made a very tight one. Because this aircraft is so lightly loaded, I didn't really lose that much when I was in that turn. Try that in an F-16, and you'll basically be stalled before you get a quarter of the turn in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and push the throttle all the way forward, build up as much energy as I can, and we'll do the exact same thing. And you can notice, even though my turn rate is the same, the amount of distance and room I've sucked up will increase. All right, so I got myself going about 260. Go ahead and do it to the right this time. Now notice, it's about the same in this aircraft, but it actually makes a wider circle. Bring myself all the way around here. And go ahead and bring us out. Don't forget to push that nose forward a little bit when you come out of a turn. Nice. So those are two important concepts you're going to see, especially when you move to bigger aircraft. That even though you're not going to overstress the airplane, you're going to run into a situation where if you're going so much faster, sure, you can pull the G's, but it doesn't mean that the other guy can't sneak inside of your turn circle if he's going at a lower speed. You notice, by the way, how much stress I've already put on this aircraft. So the next maneuver we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at some very, very basic vertical maneuvers. The first vertical maneuver we're going to take a look at is going to be a split S, which is a very, very, very common and very strategic maneuver. A split S is simply what you're going to do is flip the aircraft over and you're going to pull back on a stick. One of the cool things about a split S is you're basically going to be trading airspeed for the purposes of changing direction as well as a little bit of altitude. You can't really do a split S if you're low to the ground. It's kind of dangerous. One of the tricks to split S, of course, is going to be your entry speed. If you enter the split S fast, remember, you're going to take up more distance. So in our case, what I'm actually actually going to do is I'm going to just get us a little bit of altitude here. I want to be at least 600 meters up before we try this attempt. Keep in mind, each aircraft has a different limitation as far as what altitude you should try this maneuver at. And I'm actually going to slow the aircraft down a little bit here. Now, when we do this later on in an F-16, you have to have almost 10,000 feet underneath you to be safe. You could technically do it at 5,000 feet, but I don't recommend it. So what we're going to do is, we're just, again, like I said, slow down a little bit. We're going to very hard roll. And then we're just going to gently pull back on the controls. Remember, as you come down this, you're going to pick up speed. You want to do this very, very smoothly. And as we come out of it, you're just going to go ahead and apply full throttle and use all that energy collected to basically shoot yourself back up like a cannon. Now, what you probably noticed is as I was coming through that maneuver, the aircraft picked up a tremendous amount of speed when it was in the vertical. And you can see that even though I was at 600 meters, I was getting dangerously close to the ground. One of the most common crashes people will do, especially with older aircraft, is they'll go ahead and pull back too hard. The safer thing to do is to actually simply reduce your speed a little bit and gently pull back. You'll notice I did not exceed my maximum G limitation on that aircraft at all during that entire pulling back maneuver. Now, if I did that at a higher speed, let's say I started at 300 kilometers per hour, not only would I have overstressed the airplane, but I probably would have done some real damage to it as I went too fast with the airplane as well. You could even over-rev the propeller if you were not careful with it. So now we're going to go ahead and get all that energy back. Go ahead and level ourselves off. And now we'll take a look at the opposite maneuver. So the opposite maneuver, of course, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to gain altitude and trade it for speed. Now, you can do this a couple different ways. You can do this with an Immelman turn, which is simply you're going to try to pull back at the same time as going ahead in rolling, or you can try to go ahead and do basically a reverse split S. The danger to the reverse split S is a lot of aircraft don't have enough energy to do this maneuver, but it's a spectacular way to go ahead and give up a lot of speed if you need that little burst of altitude. So for us, we're going to go ahead and use full throttle here and kind of build up as much power as we possibly can. Again, we'll just get this thing revving nicely. I'm going to go ahead and push that nose down. Now, again, we need to build up as much energy and speed as we possibly can with this thing before we try this. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to smoothly pull back. Now, when you do this, as you get vertical, you want to go ahead and pull back a little more aggressively. And then as the weight of the nose starts to pull you back down again, you're going to want to go ahead and press it the other way. Now that we're in position, we're simply going to push the nose over and so gently kind of recover. Now, notice how slow we are now. So even though we were able to do ourselves a 180 and get a little bit of extra altitude, we basically were on the edge of a stall when we came out of that particular maneuver. So whenever you're going to do anything like that, always be practicing it with enough speed. Otherwise, you will stall out halfway through. So I'm going to go ahead and regenerate our energy here, which I'm doing a pretty good job of. I'm going to go ahead and back the throttle back and kind of get us a little bit slowed down here. And now we're pretty good to go. Those basic maneuvers are going to serve you very well. Keep in mind that anything you're going to be doing as far as aggressive high-speed maneuvering is going to be a combination of those different elements. Remember, the harder you pull back, the slower you're going to go, which is going to make it more difficult. It's much better to save the energy and use it at the last second than it is to waste it on the first turn. And as you'll see with different aircraft, is they're going to have different properties as far as which ones can do when, and how you can basically run the other guy out of energy depending on the situation. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and take a look at is we're going to take a look at a couple different types of rolls. The first roll you're going to see is what they're going to be called an Aileron Roll. The best use of an Aileron Roll is basically if you want to try to distract the guy behind you. If you know you have a faster roll rate than the guy behind you, you can use it as a very aggressive tactic to basically cause him to change direction, which is of course going to suck up some of his energy. Whenever you're doing an Aileron Roll, it's going to be a combination of two different elements. It's going to be pushing the stick in the direction you want to roll, and it's going to be pushing the rudder in the direction you want to roll. Finding the right amount of rudder takes a little while to be able to do it very smoothly. One really cool trick whenever you're doing Aileron rolls, if you bring the nose up just a teeny tiny bit, it makes it much easier to do. This aircraft is not a high performance aircraft, but it is a stunt plane and it actually can do it very well. So we're just going to go ahead and push those two together. And you can see as I came out, the aircraft wanted to jerk itself all the way, which meant I used way too much rudder. Again, that particular technique isn't going to do much for you. However, if you want to mess with the guy behind you, you can start by taking one turn, pulling back, and then quickly doing a turn reversal, and then pulling back the other way. This is called a snake, and we'll take a look at that when we start flying the F-16 a little later on. Ooh, need to be a little bit quicker with my feet, being lazy today. Another thing you're going to be looking for is going to be the barrel roll. The barrel roll is basically for the purposes of trying to keep an object in one place and flying as if you're in a big tunnel around it. For example, if I take a look right over my left, I've got, let's see here, something that's easy to barrel roll around. That looks pretty good. Let's say I want to take this little copse of trees. Go ahead and bring the aircraft around. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that in the same position the entire roll. So I'm simply going to roll around it and then try to keep that exactly in the same spots. and this is a barrel roll. The great advantages to barrel rolls is they're going to give you the ability to go ahead and keep something in the same spot and basically run it out of energy in the event that that thing is that you're trying to run from is a missile. It is an excellent technique as far as, like I said, SAM evasion, and you're going to see it as a great way to go ahead and dump a million countermeasures behind you as a way to basically distract people. The last maneuver we're going to take a look at today is going to be the straight-up flip. The reason why flips are not really recommended for any aircraft is on account of the fact that you're just going to be sucking a lot of energy. But that being said, sometimes if you have something like an F-15 or even a lightly weight F-16, you can basically do flips with people vertically rather than do some kind of scissors, as we'll take a little later on. So we've got about 700 meters underneath me, which is a pretty good amount of distance. So to start this, what we're going to do is we're going to start by pressing down. Nose over. Pick up a little bit of speed. Looks pretty good there. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling back smoothly. And what I do is I look out the right window. So as you start to climb, go ahead and pull back tighter as you get towards the top. And then as you start to get the weight of the engine, start pushing forward gently. Start coming down. Don't forget to reduce your power. And as you start to fly out, go ahead and gently apply your power again. And we're right back to where we started. Again, a great maneuver if you're trying to avoid something from the right, but it's absolutely garbage in a dogfight unless you have an aircraft that is excellent in the vertical. Alright, hopefully this video helps as far as giving you a general idea of some of the different maneuvers you can start to get comfortable with the aircraft. Like I said, if you have auto rudder enabled, you're going to get a lot less of this, like I always suffer from because of my own desiring to make things difficult for myself. Once you've kind of gotten the hang of the basic maneuvers, being able to land this airplane, then we'll take a look at some navigation and we'll move on to some intermediate aircraft. Enjoy.